Well, I was trying to think of a title for this message, and it's the message about the fiery furnace, right? And about living fearless before, during, and after the fiery furnace. And I thought about people who experience heat. And I don't know about you, but do you ever have arguments in the summertime? It's like, oh, is it hotter or is it humider? I know it's not a word, but I'm just saying, do you ever have these? And then you get these people around the country who try to convince you that it's not really hot. You know what I'm saying? It's like, oh, it's 112. Well, yeah, but it's a dry heat. It's like, I'm just going to tell you, if it's over 85, I'm sweating. It doesn't matter what kind of heat it is. It's a heat, and so it doesn't matter that it's a dry heat. But as I was thinking about this fiery furnace message, I thought that's a great title. But it's a dry heat. And how to live fearless before, during, and after the furnace. And so I studied a little bit about fear this week. And as a pastor, I just want to say it's an epidemic that's sweeping generations of people. I mean, I think people have always had fears, right? But I think that fear has begun to permeate our culture. And I think part of that is just because we have 24/7 news, you know what I mean? We know every bad thing that happens in any place in the country or world. We see it all over social media. So you're just aware of more of what happens. And so instead, where you may have been concerned about something locally or nationally, or maybe the 2-minute segment on the global news 20 years ago, now you have instant access to see all the atrocities of the world at any moment, at any time, as soon as they happen. And I think that builds sort of some fears inside of us. So I wondered what some of the most common fears were. So you can look, maybe some of us have some of these same fears. Public speaking, heights, bugs, snakes, or other animals. Yeah, you got to watch out for those chinchillas. They will get you every time, right? Fears of drowning, claustrophobia, flying strangers. I thought it was hilarious that zombies made the list. I guess The Walking Dead have done their job from the TV show. Darkness, clowns, clowns are creepy though. Let's just be honest. That is real. And then ghosts. So I looked at that and I thought, well, let's break it down another way. Let's do an actual scientific poll. So Chapman University's 2018 scientific poll. Here's the top fears of this year, of 2018. You've got corruption of government officials. Yep, it's probably going to happen. Pollution of oceans and rivers. Pollution of drinking water. Not having enough money for future. People I love becoming seriously ill or dying. Air pollution. Extinction of planet and species. Global warming, climate change, and high medical bills. I would guess some of that's probably going to happen. And some of it may not happen. And that's okay. But then I thought, let's break it down even more. Let's see state by state. What are the top fears state by state? And so this is Google's most searched fears by state. And so I don't know if you want to look at California, but their most searched fear by their state was the fear of success. Which I just got to tell you, for most of those who move out for the movie industry, it's not going to happen. It's a fear you'll never realize because you're not going to be successful, but that's okay. It looks like fear of marriage over there somewhere. I don't know. It looks like rings. Fear of spiders is common. I think it's really interesting that there's 2 states that don't have any sort of fear. You've got Wyoming and North Dakota. Apparently they're fearless there. Yeah, exactly. In New York and also in North Carolina, which I think this fear is probably founded, it's a fear of driving, which I'm not afraid of driving. I'm just afraid of these other people who don't know how to drive. You know what I'm saying? But apparently we're afraid of driving with a hammer. I don't know what that graphic even is. It's like, oh, it's a key. Okay, well, all right. I thought it was an axe at first, and I was thinking is this The Walking Dead? I don't know what's happening. But you know what I think is really interesting that didn't make any of the lists for the top fears? The fear of the Lord. Isn't that interesting? Nobody puts a fear of the Lord anywhere even on the list. A fear of a relationship with a holy God and a messed up humanity. And I think there's a reason that it doesn't make the list, because if you really understand who God is and you have a healthy fear of who He is, if you have a healthy awe and reverence and respect for who He is, then everything else that's on that list doesn't show up on a list. Because when you fear Him, you don't fear anything else. And you can truly be fearless. And I think Daniel and his friends show us a lesson about that. Like when we realize that the fear of the Lord, he's above everything. All other fears are tempered under the reality of his lordship, under his authority, under his power, under his ability, under his worthiness. It trumps everything. And so I think Daniel's friends teach us how to live fearlessly in the midst of a godless culture. And the people looked at them and they were, wow, that's not us. And they had this winsome characteristic of their life and made them question who their God was. What would happen if every believer across our land was able to be at a place where we could actually tap into live fearless? What would that look like? How would that change the community around us? Let's look at what Daniel has to say. Daniel chapter 3, verse 1. Daniel chapter 3, verse 1. Ben, I don't know if you can hear it anywhere out there, but I'm getting like feedback up on the stage back here. I don't know. It may just be me, but thanks, man. So let's look at Daniel chapter 3, verse 1. Chapter 3, verse 1. It says, King Nebuchadnezzar made an image of gold whose height was 60 cubits and its breadth 6 cubits. 90-foot tall statue of gold. Now, it wasn't solid gold, but it was gold covered. 90 feet tall and 9 feet wide. And he set it up on the plain in Dura in the province of Babylon. And then King Nebuchadnezzar sent to gather the satraps, prefects, governors, the counselors, the treasurers, the justices, the magistrates, and the officials of the provinces to come to the dedication of the image that King Nebuchadnezzar had set up. And then the satraps, the prefects, the governors, the counselors, treasurers, justices, magistrates, and all it's like it's election week or something here, people. Officials of the provinces gathered together for the dedication of the image that Nebuchadnezzar had set up. And they stood before the image that he had set up. Now it doesn't tell us what the image was. Some scholars think it may have been a statue of himself. He had this dream in chapter 2, and Daniel interprets the dream, and so Nebuchadnezzar was the head of gold, and so they think maybe he was set up as a tower, but the dimensions are weird. Like a 90-foot tall by 9-foot wide man looks odd. You know what I'm saying? Like it's just the dimensions aren't right. And so some scholars believe, no, it was a representation of his god, Baal Marduk. And so he set this up to worship his god, but either way, it's really a worship of his god and a worship of himself. And so he calls all the people. He was a king who enrolled other people from the countries that he conquered into leadership. And so just like Daniel, he had gathered the best and the brightest and made them leaders. He did that in other countries that he ruled as well. And so he brought them in for the dedication. This is a ribbon cutting ceremony. He wants everybody to be there. And so there's 7 layers of leadership, from the governors and the princes and the prefects down to the sheriffs, right? Like this is everybody who's in leadership is there at this one place about 16 miles outside of the city of Babylon in the plain of Dura. And they're there for the dedication. Now look at what he says, verse 4. And the herald proclaimed aloud, "You are commanded, O peoples and nations and languages, that when you hear the sound of the horn, the pipe, the lyre, the trigon, the harp, the bagpipe, and every kind of music, you're to fall down and worship the golden image that Nebuchadnezzar has set up." This is a moment where he's calling for allegiance and loyalty, where he's saying, I don't care who you are, I don't care where you come from, I don't care who your gods used to be, my God is your God now. We have a lot of them in Babylon. There were 5 main gods, but they had hundreds that they allowed people to worship. And he says, doesn't matter who you are, doesn't matter where you're from, but my God is the worthiest of gods. And so I don't care if you worship these other ones. It doesn't matter to me. We're this polytheistic society, and so you can do that, but my God is the worthiest one. And so everybody from every nation, from every tribe, from every tongue is going to come and bow down before my God and worship him as the worthiest of all. And so look at what he says, verse 6. And whoever doesn't fall down and worship shall immediately be cast into a burning, fiery furnace. So here was his message that day turn or burn, right? Like it sounds a lot like messages I heard growing up. It was a turn or burn, right? It's like you either come and you bow down the knee before this God that I've raised up because he's the worthiest above all the other gods, or else you're getting chucked into the furnace that we have sitting there from when we smelted the gold. It takes a lot of gold to cover a 90-foot statue. And so it's this fiery burning furnace. It sounds a little bit like overkill. It's like 3 words to describe one. Cast into the fiery burning furnace. But that's what it is. And the furnaces at this time would get up to around 1,800 degrees Fahrenheit. That's enough to cook some meat on, isn't it? Yeah. So he says, whoever doesn't bow down, whoever doesn't declare their devotion, whoever doesn't say that my God is the worthiest of gods and prove their loyalty to me, in that moment, if you don't bow the knee, you get chucked into the fire. Look at what happens. Here's what he says, verse 7. Therefore, as soon as all the peoples heard the sound of the horn, the pipe, the lyre, the trigon, the harp, the bagpipe, and every kind of music, all the peoples, nations, and languages fell down and worshiped the golden image that Nebuchadnezzar had set up. This scene sounds very familiar, doesn't it? It sounds like a worship service. That's what it is. This is similar to what happens in the book of the Revelation, where there's the one true king, Jesus, the Lamb who's been slain, and people from every nation and every tribe and every tongue are gathered around his throne. And then the pipes play and everything plays and everybody bows down and bows the knee and says, he's Lord. Like, this is what Nebuchadnezzar wants in this moment. He wants to be God in this moment. He wants his God to reign supreme. And so he's like, hey, you're gonna do this. Everyone, I don't care where you're from, you can worship other gods, you can do these other things, but you are going to do this. And so when it plays, like, we're all going to worship. This is forced worship. You're going to bow down on your face and you're going to worship my God because he's worthier than all your other gods. Remember, my God gave me the power to conquer your gods. My God gave me the power to come in and conquer your country. And I took your stuff from the temples and I put it in my temple as a trophy because my God is better than your God. So I don't care if you worship your other gods, but you're going to come and you're going to bow down. And if you don't, you're getting chucked in the fire. Right? And look what he says. Verse 8. Therefore, at a certain time, Chaldeans came forward and maliciously accused the Jews. These were the magicians and the wise men whom Daniel had been put over as the chief. And so they had grown up in Babylon. The Chaldeans, they're Babylonian people. They had this ancient history of being from Babylon. And so they had studied the dark arts and astrology and all these things for hundreds of years, and here they are, and they're being led by this Jewish guy named Daniel, who just comes in and he learns for 3 years, and now he's over everybody. Are you kidding me? And so they get really upset, and look at what it says. They declared, O King Nebuchadnezzar, live forever. You, O king, have made a decree that every man who hears the sound of the hornpipe, lyre, trigon, harp, bagpipe, every kind of music, shall fall down and worship the golden image. And whoever doesn't fall down and worship shall be cast into the burning fiery furnace. But there are certain Jews whom you have appointed over the affairs of Babylon. Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. They've got their pagan names, right? They're supposed to be worshiping the false gods. They were supposed to turn into these people who were just like us. They weren't Hananiah, Mishael, and Azariah anymore. We gave them new names. They were supposed to worship new gods, but here they are. They're still worshiping their old gods and refusing to worship our gods. Do you know what they're saying, King? They're saying your God is not worthy of worship. And you're not worthy of being listened to. And look what they say. These men, O king, they pay you no attention. They don't serve your gods or worship the golden image that you've set up. Scholars sort of disagree. They don't know if they're just sort of slamming the king in a respectful way. It's like, well, what was your choice to put these foreigners in charge here? And, this is what happens. They don't worship our gods, right? And look at what happens, verse 13. Then Nebuchadnezzar, in a furious rage, commanded that Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego be brought. So they brought these men before the king. This word furious rage, it means this feeling of intense anger that doesn't subside, and it's on an epic scale, right? Have you ever seen somebody in a furious rage? Have you ever seen yourself in a mirror when you're in the midst of a furious rage? Have you ever gotten that picture? That's an ugly image, isn't it? And so here he is, his face contorted. He's just, I'm the king. My God conquered their God. I got the stuff from their temple in my God's temple right now as a trophy. The stuff they're supposed to use to worship their God is sitting in my thing as a trophy. Are you kidding me? My God is the worthiest of gods. Bring them now, right? And look at what happens. Verse 14. So Nebuchadnezzar answered and said to them, is it true, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, you don't serve my gods or worship the golden image that I've set up? He's like dumbfounded. How is this possible? How is this like, do you know the investment I've made in you? Like, I invested money and time and education for 3 years. I've invested all this stuff into you so that you could be a leader here. I could have just left you in that place. I could have just killed you off, but I've come and I put my time and my money and my effort and my stuff into this, and you actually have a role and you have a position. Like, I elevated you at Daniel's command. Like, he recommended you guys, and here you are. Are you seriously saying you don't worship my God? You don't think they're worthy? Like, I got his trophies of your God in my God's temple. You're seriously saying you won't bow down and worship this God? Now, can you imagine the scene? Like, just picture it in your brain get out of the Sunday school version of this for just a second. Picture thousands of people in a plane with a 90-foot tall by 9-foot wood statue covered in gold and the most beautiful music that you've ever heard. I mean, he had charge of the greatest symphony at the time. He got every instrument imaginable, and they're playing the most beautiful song. And all of a sudden, every single person from every nation and every tribe and every tongue, every single person bows down and worships before this golden image that's been set up, and there's only 3 people who are still standing. Like, picture if you're down at Bank of America Stadium, right? But you're all on the field, and thousands of people on the field, and everybody is cheering, and they bow down. Oh, we're not worthy of your touchdown passes, right? But then, like, there's only 3 who are standing up wearing Browns jerseys. You know what I'm saying? Like, that's what that would be like in that moment, right? And it's like, we're going to take you and chuck you into the keep pounding thing, and we're just going to pound you. Like, if you don't bow down, it's like, no, we're Browns fans. We're content to lose and still be cheering. You know what I mean? It's like, in this moment, right? So, yeah, but we whipped on you. We whipped on you. Yeah, it doesn't matter. Like, it's all good. So can you imagine the scene, though? As thousands bow down on their faces, and they're the only ones standing. What would you do? Like, it's not a theory. It's life and death. Like, literally, they see the furnace right there. Would you tell yourself something like, well, I'm going to bow down, but I'm not going to pray to that God. It's not going to be real for me. I mean, while I bow down in front of this false God, I'll be praying to the real God. Like, then God wouldn't want me to die, right? I mean, I could still be in a position of power and leadership and authority. Like, if I bow down, I can still accomplish so much stuff, and he knows that's not my heart. And these other people, I can explain. I mean, they're not even saying this is the only God. They're just saying this God is worthy above all the other gods, but they still let other people worship all these other gods. What would you do? And they are content to stand. And so as he questions them, look at what he says, verse 15. He must have thought really highly of them. He gives them another chance. Like, he could have just thrown them in the furnace based on the accusation, right? When it said, look what he says. Now, if you're ready, when you hear the sound of the hornpipe, lyre, trigon, harp, bagpipe, every kind of music, to fall down and worship the image I've made, well and good. But if you don't worship, you'll immediately be cast into the burning fiery furnace. Look at this. Read this with me. This is the peak of arrogance in this moment. Look at what he says. And who... Read this with me. And who is the God who will deliver you out of my hands? I'm the one who won the battle, and my God helped me. And I'm the one who brought you here. And I'm the one who taught you. And I'm the one who built this thing. And I'm the one who commands the flames. And I got an army right here. Every sheriff across my kingdom is here in this moment. You think you're going to get away? Like, what God can save you out of my hand? I'm right here in front of you. They're right here behind you. They're going to tie you up and they're going to take you over and throw you in. Do you really think any God can deliver you out of my hand? like the game is upped, what would you do? Look at what it says, verse 16. This is what it's like to be fearless. Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego answered and said to the king, "O Nebuchadnezzar, we have no need to answer you in this matter." Your mind's made up, our mind's made up. There's no need talking about this. Zero compromise. Zero second guessing. It's just, if that's what you're going to do, we're not going to stand here and try to make you change your mind. That's unbelievable. There's no like, no, please, King, oh, please, can you like exile us or something? I mean, it's like, if that's what you're going to do. Now look at what it says next. This is crazy. This is what it's like to be fearless. He says, if this be so, if this does happen, our God, whom we serve, is able to deliver us from the burning fiery furnace. What a huge statement of faith. He's like, even if you throw us in, our God is so powerful, he could do something. Like our God's the one who parts Red Seas. Our God is the one who, when Moses was before the king of Egypt, when he was before Pharaoh, and Pharaoh said, what God's going to be able to deliver you? He sent plagues that plagued the entire land. Like he's the one who delivered our people. He's the one who fed them for 40 years in the desert. He's the one who did all these things. Are you serious? There is no situation where my God is not able. Even if you throw us in, he's still able. Now look at what he says. This is crazy. But if not, read this with me. I love this. But if not, be it known to you, O king, that we will not serve your gods or worship the golden image that you've set up. Listen, it doesn't matter what happened on a battlefield. It doesn't matter what you do to our bodies. Your God isn't worthy. There's only one God who's worthy of worship. That's crazy. This is what it's like to live fearless. Maybe you just want to jot this down in your bulletin, or maybe you want to take a picture of it. But here's what he's saying. Here's what being fearless means. It doesn't mean you're not scared. It doesn't mean you don't have things that are actually to be afraid. It doesn't mean that life is hunky-dory. It doesn't mean that there's not situations that should make you afraid. Here's what being fearless means. It means knowing whether God rescues or delivers. He's the only God worthy of worship. Like either he can, he's able, he can do it. He can rescue me out of this. I don't care what you say. Like he's the God who heals. He's the God who restores. He's the God who redeems. He can rescue. There's no such thing as a hopeless situation with my God. Are you serious? He's the one who created it all. He can create brand new things to get me out of this mess. Like he is able. He's always able. Like it doesn't matter what situation you're in. He's able. He can do it. He can rescue you anytime. It doesn't matter what the doctors say. It doesn't matter what the marriage counselor says. It doesn't matter what your kids say. It doesn't matter what your finances say. He is always able to rescue, but he doesn't always. Right? There's sometimes he says no. And I love that. Like Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego are under no impressions. They're like, our God's able, he can, and we're believing he will, but even if he doesn't, there's no way we'd worship your gods. Because our God will deliver us. Like, look what they're saying. Even if we have to go through this fire, he delivers us to be with him. So either way, he's the only God worthy of worship. He's the only one who can rescue. And if he doesn't rescue, he'll deliver us. He'll lead us through the furnace, and then he'll lead us into his presence. He's delivering us either way. Either he rescues us out or he delivers us to him. Either way, he's the only God worthy of worship. Can you say that? That's what it means to live fearless. It's to look cancer in the eye and say, God is able. He totally can, and we believe he will. But even if he doesn't, he's going to deliver me through it, and he's going to bring me to be with him, and he's the only God worthy of worship. That's what it means to look at marriage problems or kid stuff or finances. God is so able. But even if he doesn't, he's going to deliver me. He's going to walk me through, and then he's going to carry me through to the other side. He's going to deliver me one way or another. And so what do I have to be afraid of? Look at what he says. I love this. Look at verse 19. I'll go quickly here. Then Nebuchadnezzar was filled with fury, and the expression of his face changed against Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, and he earned the furnace heated 7 times more than it was usually heated. It just means as hot as it can get, right? And here's what he says. He ordered some of the mighty men of his army to bind Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego and cast them into the burning fiery furnace. And these men were bound in their cloaks, their tunics, their hats, their garments, and they were thrown into the burning fiery furnace. They got their silk puffy shirts on, man. They got their best pirate garb on, and it's like they're still bound up, thrown right in. Because the king's order was urgent and the furnace overheated, the flame of the fire killed the men who took up Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. And these three men, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, fell into the burning fiery furnace. They're bound up and they're walking. In our Bibles, it doesn't have the story of it, but in the Apocrypha, the Catholic Bible, or also in the Greek Orthodox Bible or the Russian Orthodox Bible, there's this legend of a hymn that they sang as they were walking, and a prayer that they prayed as they were walking to the furnace. And so, like, as they're seeing their fate, they're still saying, God's able. Like, as they're still being walked toward, God's able, but even if he doesn't, he's the only one worthy. God's able, but even if he doesn't, he's the only one worthy. God's able, but even if he doesn't, he's the only one who will deliver. Right? Like, and they're praying and they're singing as they go. The fire's so hot, like his best men get burned up before they even get to the entrance. They die, and Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego fall in. Look at this. This is so crazy. Look what it says. Verse 24. Then King Nebuchadnezzar was astonished, and he rose up in haste, and he declared to his counselors, did we not cast 3 men bound into the fire? They answered, true, O king. It's like, is it hot out here for the king? What's happening? And he answered, he said, but I see 4 men. Read it. What does it say? I see 4 men unbound, walking in the midst of the fire, and they're not hurt. And the appearance of the 4th is like a son of the gods. This is crazy. Like, literally, the guys who throw them in die before they can even get to the entrance. And Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, they stumble in, and then they're just like hanging. They're just walking. Like, I love it. I got this little illustration for you. I was at Target last night. You ever go to Target? I was looking in the Halloween clearance, and I saw this, and I knew I was preaching about this today. And I thought, you know what I'm saying? All right. This is Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. They get tucked in here, and there's flames going all around, right? And they're just like, praise be to God. Praise be to God. Like, they're not hurt at all. They're just like chilling. Like, they're expecting to be like, oh my gosh, we're burning, right? Like, they've got the flame on. They're expecting all of this, and they're just sitting there praising God. And who's in their midst? Jesus. Jesus is in the midst of their suffering. Do you know what's crazy about this? Look at me. Listen to this. You can be fearless in the midst of the furnace. Like, God doesn't always rescue, right? Sometimes you go through the trials of life, and here's what fearless looks like in the middle of the furnace. It's this prayer. Here's what it is. Write this down. It's knowing that the only thing that'll be consumed in the midst of the trial is the stuff the enemy used to bind you. Like, they got flames all around. They're just chilling. But the only thing gone is the ropes. That's the only thing gone. Like, the ropes that they were bound with. Everything else is, their puffy shirts are still good to go. Like, their turbans are still on tight. Like, they've got their dress. Like, it's amazing. They're there, and they're just walking around in the presence of Jesus. And these other accounts, these extra biblical accounts tell us that the Spirit of God, as Jesus comes and the angel of the Lord, he comes and he breathes this mist all around. It's like they're in the bubble, like they're in the misters, right? And it's just, the fire is raging all around them, and they're just hanging out. And the only thing that burned up was what the enemy bound them with. Listen to me. When you walk through cancer, like, sometimes the only thing that's burned up in the midst of the trial is your impatience. Right? When you walk through marriage difficulty, the only thing that's burned up can be like your unloving heart towards your spouse. Like the things that the enemy used to bind you. Like when you walk through physical stuff, the only thing burned up is your unhealthy habits of overwork. Right? You see what I'm saying? Like, God takes a trial and he says, everything is going to be burning all around you. I'm like this mist that covers you up, and the only thing that's going to be burned away, the only thing that's going to be consumed is the stuff the enemy's using to tie you, to make your life trip over and over and over again. That's what trials can be like. That's what it means to be fearless. It's knowing in the midst of all those things that your bindings from your enemy are the only things that burn. And you can be content, even if it's all raging beside you. I love that verse from Isaiah 43, 1 and 2. Hear, O Israel, I'm the Lord who formed you, who created you. I've called you by name, you're mine. And when you walk through the still waters, I'll be with you. When you go through the raging waters, they won't be overwhelming to you. And when you walk through the fire, you won't be consumed by it. It'll burn up all this stuff around you, but it won't burn you. You're not going to be consumed by it. Look at what he says, verse 27. And the satraps, prefects, and the king's counselors gathered around, and they saw that the fire had no power over their bodies. The hair of their heads wasn't even singed. Their cloaks weren't harmed, and no smell of fire had come on. You can get within 30 feet of a fire, and you smell like fire. They didn't even smell like fire. Nebuchadnezzar said, "Blessed be the God of Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, who sent his angel and delivered his servants who trusted in him and set aside the king's command. They were fearless, and they yielded up their bodies rather than serve or worship any god except their own. I make this decree. Any people, nation, language that speak anything against the God of Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego will be torn limb from them and their house in ruins, for there's no other God who's able to rescue in this way." Now, he didn't convert. He's like, oh, there's still tons of other gods, but no God can rescue you like that. Listen, what if people saw you suffer and they watched your life? What would they say about your God as a result of that? Man, there's no God that can deliver like that. You see what they've been through? You see what their marriage has been through? You see what their kids have been through? You see what their finances have been through? You see what their bodies have been through? You see what their jobs, man, and yet they're still them, and they're still joyful, and they still love God. Man, there's no God who can deliver like that. Is that what our trials do? Do they magnify who God is? Or instead, do they focus on our suffering and our stuff? Listen, today you can live fearless before, during, and after the furnace. You can live fearless. Fearless is knowing that whether God rescues you or he just delivers you to himself, he's the only God worthy of worship. And in the middle of the fire, in the middle of the trial of your life, it's possible that the only thing that's burned up is what the enemy uses to bind you. You can be fearless. Man, what would that do if all of us lived like that? People would look at us and say, not only are they surviving, man, they're thriving. And even if they didn't totally convert to know God, man, there's no God that can deliver like that. Let's pray. You know, I heard a saying one time, you're getting ready to go into a trial, you're in the midst of a trial, or you're getting ready to come out of a trial. That's way too pessimistic for me. You know, I'm like the eternal optimist. And so here's how I would put it. You're about to experience rescue or deliverance. You're experiencing rescue or deliverance. Or you will experience rescue or deliverance. Is your life consumed with fears in this moment? Fears about your marriage, fears about your kids, fears about your body, fears about our country, fears about... I'm not saying there's not legitimate reasons to be afraid. I think there are. There was a real furnace. There was a real king, and there were real soldiers waiting to bind them. But even in that place, they were fearless. They knew that whether God rescued them, because He's always able to do that. He can always restore what your parenting mistakes have broken. He can always rescue that. He can always rescue in finance. He can always rescue in your physical life. He can always rescue spiritually. He can always rescue. But even if He doesn't, He always delivers. He brings you through. Even if it means He brings you through into His presence, what greater joy is there than that? He's the only one worthy of worship. Listen, maybe you just need to confess and just say, Dear Jesus, forgive me for being controlled by fear. Forgive me for being controlled by fear. I put my trust in You. You are sovereign. You're over everything. You're Lord over it all. So no matter what comes in my life, I know You can rescue, and if You don't, I know You will deliver. Maybe we just need to tattoo that on our brains. God, no matter what comes, I know You can rescue, and if You don't, You will deliver. No matter what comes today, God, I know You can rescue, and if not, I know You will deliver. Some of us just need to live out that statement of faith. And man, what a difference it'll make. Others of us in this house, just pray this. Lord, I'm in the middle of the fire. Is that any of you? You're in the middle of the fire in your body or with your work or with whatever it is. You're in the middle of the fire. Is that you? You're in the furnace. It's not a possibility of what could happen. You're in the midst of a trial. You're in the midst of the depression. You're in the midst of the hardship. You're in the midst of marital discord. You're in the midst of craziness, of feeling totally isolated and totally alone. You wish you had a partner to fight with. You feel like you're just by yourself. Maybe you're in the middle of the fire in parenting. You just don't have a clue what to do anymore. Maybe you're in the middle of the fire with your finances, whatever it is. Listen, I'm in the middle of the fire. Here's your prayer. You ready? Is this you? Would you just pray something like this? God, I pray the only thing that would be consumed are the cords the enemy uses to entangle me. God, I pray the only thing that would be consumed is my anger. God, I pray the only thing that would be consumed is my hard-heartedness. God, I pray the only thing that would be consumed is my lack of trust in You. God, I pray the only thing that would be consumed is my impatience. God, I pray that the only thing that would be consumed is my judgmentalism. God, I pray that the only thing that would be consumed is my lack of mercy. God, I pray that the only thing that would be consumed in the middle of this is my apathy or my stinginess or whatever it is. God, let that only thing that's consumed in the midst of the trial be the things that the enemy uses to trip me up. Let me walk around with the silly flame thing all on my head, content and cool breezed by You, Jesus, because You are present in the midst of every suffering. There is no suffering that you walk through that Jesus isn't right there beside you in the fire. He is your peace in the middle of it all. Would you just pray that? Some of us, we just need to pray. Maybe you're before or after. You just need to pray, God, I just pray that I would know that no matter what happens today, You can rescue, and if You don't, You will deliver. You're the only one worthy of worship either way. Others of you in the house, you're in the midst of, God, let the only thing that's consumed in the midst of this trial be the cords the enemy uses to trip me up. Let me just be like Pastor Dave with that silly flame on his head, burning all around, but not touching me. Not consumed by it. I just want to pray for you. It's hard for me to see up here with the lights on, but I'm just going to walk down here. And with every head bowed and every eye closed, if that's you, if that's the first one, you want fear not to consume you anymore, you just say, I want to know that I know that I know that no matter what happens, God can rescue. And if He doesn't, He's going to deliver. And He's the only one worthy of worship. I just need to live that way. If that's you, would you just raise your hand? I just want to pray for you. Just raise your hand. Just lift it up. You want that to be a change. How many of you are in the fire right now? You're in the midst of the fire, and It's been consuming you, but it doesn't have to. And you just want to pray, whatever I'm walking through, would the Lord just let the only thing burned up be the cords, the enemy's entanglement? Just pray for me that, David. Would you just lift your hand up? You're in the middle of the fire right now. Yeah, okay. Lord, see these your people as we respond to you. You're the only God worthy of worship. We know you can rescue, and even when you don't, you will always deliver. You're worthy. And Lord, today we just say, in the midst of the hardest times of life, help us to live in such a way that even lost people around us take notice. What in the world is going on with them? How are they making it through? And they'll know it's you, Jesus. The only things burned up are the things the enemy uses to bind us. Lord, bless us as we go. In Jesus' name. And all God's people said.